So this week's project, I'm going to show you how I made a mug out of wood that will hold a liquid, will not leak, and be food safe. Specifically, a mug for whiskey, made of oak and charred on the inside. Stay tuned to see how this was done. I'm starting with a block of oak here, and I'm using my roughing gouge. The roughing gouge is useful in the beginning when I'm dealing with a square. Notice the small amount of shavings that are coming off because I'm only hitting the corners as it's turning around. But now you can see that it's getting round. Notice how much more shavings are coming off. It will remove a lot of material very, very quickly. And it's also much heavier than my bowl gouge. It is a gouge, but the roughing gouge is much heavier and therefore will take the abuse of those corners coming around and hitting it. The other thing you may have noticed there is occasionally the blank is stopping. It's because I'm up against a live center, so I'm not holding it real firmly. So it will, if I put a lot of pressure on it, doing a heavy cut, it will slip. The other thing you'll notice there, I tightened up my tailstock. As I'm turning, because it slips a little bit, I have to keep tightening up my tailstock to keep more and more pressure on that live center. Here I'm pretty well round. Again, you can see the amount of shavings that are coming off, and they're coming off very quickly. Now I'm just using a parting tool and squaring up the end and also starting to form the tenon. This tenon will be used when I reverse it around and put it in my chuck. And then it'll be held much more firmly and I won't need my tailstock at that point. Right now I need my tailstock because I need to keep pressure up against the live center. Here I've just made a little gauge. I use my laser engraver to cut that out. And it's just a template and it's designed so that I know that the chuck is that the tenon is the right size to fit inside my chuck. And it just works as a go, no-go gauge. I know when that fits that it's a good size to fit in my chuck. Here I am. I've reversed it around. It is now in my chuck, so it's held very solidly. Those two pencil lines that I made are going to be the top and bottom of the mug. And we're going to just use the parting tool to cut that top piece to the right of that top pencil mark off completely. On the bottom, I'll just make a small indentation for now because obviously I don't want to cut it off yet. Once I've done that, I'll use my bowl gouge just to give it a bit of a shape. As I've mentioned, this is going to be a barrel shape. So I want to keep the middle fat and taper the top and bottom uniformly down so that it looks like a barrel. These two pencil lines represent the two bands running around the barrel. We'll go ahead now and use the parting tool to get rid of the material to the right because that is not going to be required. Because I'm in my chuck and it's held quite firmly and this piece is light, I do not need to keep my tailstock engaged. Because this is oak, which is a very hard wood and it's end grain, I'm going to make my life a little bit easier by just using a Forstner bit and drilling out the majority of the material inside the barrel. It won't be all of it. the hole is smaller than what I'm going to end up with, so I will use my gouge to enlarge the hole. Here I'm using a homemade depth gauge. It's just a dowel on a board, and you can see how it's used, and it gives me an indication of how deep I am and how much material is left on the bottom. The bottom is good at this point. I don't need to go any deeper, so I'll just use my bowl gouge here and just start enlarging that hole. I want the inside of the mug to follow the profile on the outside of the barrel as well, so that it's uniformly thick all the way down. So even on the inside, it's going to be fat in the middle, taper to the bottom and to the top uniformly. By drilling it out, it's made a lot less material that I have to remove. Now I'm just using my caliper gauges, and you can see here, I think, how uniform the wall is. It's quite a uniform thickness all the way down, and it's quite thin. It's about 3/16 of an inch thick. Here I'm using a piece of Formica sample, and I had cut those grooves with my parting tool, and now I just hold this sample, in this case it's black, which is really just a dense cardboard. I hold that in that groove and spinning it quite fast, holding it quite hard, and it actually burns in those lines that you see there on the barrel. So they're actually black from being burnt. Now, because this is an oak barrel and it's actually a whiskey shot glass, I'm not a drinker, but I understand that traditionally oak barrels were singed on the inside, charred, because that did impart a bit of flavor to the whiskey. So that's what I'm doing on this shot glass as well. So I'm just using my propane torch to char the inside. I apologize, I'm a little bit off camera here. But what you see there around the top of the rim, because I don't want it charred right to the rim, is I have a heat shield, just some tin foil wrapped around the top, just to prevent the charring from going right to the rim. I also have a line there that I cut in with my parting tool to separate the char from the rim itself. And I just want to come up to that line but not past it. So it's uniformly charred now on the inside, but I did notice when I took the tin foil off that I wasn't quite up to that line, and you can see that here. So I decided to use duct tape because I was having a hard time to hold the tin foil in place. So I just used a little bit of duct tape and then just carefully burnt up to that line that I scribed around the inside of the mug. Now that the duct tape has been removed, I'll go ahead and part this off. I also applied a finish, I should mention. I just sanded it up to 600 grit and buffed it out and burnished it. And I will apply a wax finish as well. So I'm going to part it off here. I went through most of the way with my parting tool, and now I'll just finish it with my handsaw. Now you can see it. I think it is looking very much like a barrel. You can see those two bands that are burned into the wood. Here I've got some epoxy. Now the epoxy is food safe and it is water and alcohol proof. So I'm just putting that on the bottom. The side grain does not leak, but the bottom of this mug is end grain and it will leak very badly. So it has to be sealed. So I put some epoxy in the bottom, just poured it, dipped it in with the brush, and then used my paintbrush and came a little ways up on the side. I don't want to cover it all because obviously I want the char to be exposed so that it will impart some flavor to the whiskey. Before I put the epoxy in the inside of the mug, the bottom of it, which is the end grain, leaked like a sieve. Water poured right through it. So I put some colored epoxy in the bottom just to seal it up. And I'm happy to report that after I did that it completely stopped the leaks. And also, I know many people ask, but yes, the epoxy is food safe. Here's a shot of the inside of the mug. You can see the epoxy in the bottom and a little bit up on the side. I think the project turned out very well. It looks very much like a barrel, which was the look that I was going for, given the use that it would be. Also here you can see it in my hand. It fits quite well. It's a good size. So this week's project was a gift for a friend. I hope she enjoys it, and I'd like to thank everybody for stopping by to see how this project was made.